Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll make a start to the Huddersfield Planning Committee with item 1, membership of the committee. We're all here. 3, 6, 8, 10. Have we some apologies? Yes? No? No substitutes? No? Right. Item 2, then, minutes of previous meeting. Are they taken as a true record? Yeah. That seconded. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Interest and lobbying. We'll start at the back.
Thank you, Chair. Page 77 and 205. I'm a member of Owen Valley Parish Council.
Councillor McGuinn.
I've got an interest in item 183. It's another interest, and it requires me to withdraw from the meeting. The reason that I was a former member of Kirklees Action Group. Lobbying. In December 2017, I was lobbied by one of the objectors to page 81, the application 152 Ravens Road. I was lobbied by the next door neighbour, and I referred this matter to the committee, and it's come back to the committee because it was deferred last time. December 2017, I was lobbied by Tim Francis on the item on page 91, Salisbury Methodist Church, and again, after talking to the planner, I referred it to the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. 2017/93444. I was lobbied by supporters, no comments. And 2017/94242, lobbied by objectors and no comment. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, items 21 and 26. Item 21, I'm a student minister in the Methodist Church. Item 26, I know the applicants. I've no pecuniary interest in either application, but I think it was better if I'm not involved in making the decisions on either of those items, and so we'll withdraw.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
None, Chair.
Councillor Sawar.
None, Chair.
Councillor Sokol, finally.
Yeah, Chair, I got to declare interest on application on number 17. It's on page 47, Clayton Field. And last time I declared the interest, and at that time the legal officer did not give me any clear guidance. I would like to have a clear guidance. The reason I'm declaring interest, because myself and my colleague, Councillor Sheikhullah, we've been involved some few meetings with the developer and the objector as well. So that's the reason I've been declaring. But I need a clear guidance from legal officer.
Thank you. You're a ward member, and so is Councillor Ulla, and you've been heavily involved in this particular site for a number of years. It's been back and forth to committee, and last time there was a comment about your involvement, but I was absolutely fine with that. However, I think for the purposes of the general principles under the code of conduct of members, for transparency, openness, the general Nolan principles, to avoid any perception of predetermination or bias, I think it would be better for both you and Councillor Ulla not to take part.
Councillor Ulla.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Same reasons as my colleague, an interest in application reference 183 map modifications to Clayton Fields, and I will take the instruction from our legal officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Homer.
None, Chair.
And Councillor Walker.
None, Chair.
Thank you. Right. Item 4, admission to the public. Sorry. Oh, sorry, yes, I've none whatsoever, thank you. Right, item 4, admission of the public, and at this stage, this meeting is open to the public, but it's not a public meeting. Therefore, I will not tolerate any clapping, shouting, or general disruption. Thank you. I hope you comply for me. Thank you. Right, item 5, deputations and petitions. Public question time. Site visits. So it's now planning. Item 16, local planning authority appeals.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Teresa Harlow, Development Management Team Leader. There are a few appeals to report. The first report is 3 joint appeals contained in one decision letter allowing a residential caravan site for 4 gypsy household and associated operational development and engineering operations. A summary of this is set out in paragraph 2.1 of the report, and that was for a site at New Hay Road at Scamenden. In addition to that, there are 2 planning appeals which were dismissed and a further appeal against an enforcement notice at 220 Manchester Road, Thornton Lodge. The appeal was dismissed and the deemed planning application was refused. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, you wanted to have a word, Councillor Bellamy?
Just like to make a comment on the appeal decision for New Way Road to Scamenden. I was quite surprised, to be honest, by the inspectorate's decision, especially as it's Greenbelt. I do believe there's a lot of conditions on this, and I know it's temporary. I just wondered if the planning officer could tell me how much longer is that temporary got left, because it's been there quite a while now already.
Through you, Chair. 15th of March is the deadline for the first condition. We then have 6 months within which to implement the drainage scheme, and then the other conditions fall in line with that.
I can't resist this, beware the Ides of March. But now, can I just say, we're not going to go as per the planning agenda. Apparently, the first 3 items we're going to have to put back until the Prowler officer comes back. His stick that he had his information on hasn't been able to decipher it here, but he will be coming. What I'll do, I'll introduce it back in as and when, as we're going through the agenda. Once I've finished that particular item, I will bring it straight in. So, thank you. Right, so I'll start now on page 81, and it's Ravensnell Road, Dalton, Huddersfield.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Francis Davis and I'm the Planning Officer attached to this application. This application was brought before members following a motion to defer based on concerns of overdevelopment, residential amenity and visual amenity at the subcommittee meeting on the 4th of January. These matters have been considered, been investigated in detail as set out in the committee report, and following consideration the application is again put forward for approval. The application seeks retrospective full planning permission for the erection of a single-storey rear extension and a first-floor rear dormer extension. The following images are provided to refresh members on the application. This is it from the side elevation, and the other neighbouring property at 154 Ravensnell Road, and the rear elevation. The application is recommended for full permission. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you. Yes.
We've got Anthony Mayhon, who objects.
Objections remain as follows. The dormer is so large that it constitutes a second storey and affects the amount of morning light in the side bedroom window of 150 and the extension wall is so close to the conservatory at 154 it affects the afternoon light in that conservatory, where the occupant likes to sit and read. The end wall could only have been built by going into the garden at 154 and was done so in the absence of the elderly occupant by removal of a section of fence and by removal of a plant pot attached to a rear wall. She was upset about that. In the terms of visual amenity, the dormer directly overlooks windows and gardens of 13 and 14 Oak Avenue and the gardens of 150 and 154 obliquely. Planning stated that the dormer didn't overlook habitable rooms. Surely it's only the residents who can decide which rooms are habitable rather than the planning department. In terms of residential amenity, we're concerned that a precedent has been set, and if similar projects were approved, the entire ambience of the surrounding bungalows would be destroyed. Regarding retrospective planning permission, the planning officer stated that developers run the financial risk of removing building development if planning permission isn't granted. We feel this might not deter builders and developers for the reason that most retrospective planning permission is put for approval and the committee is advised to pass it. The neighbours have already suffered several months of noise and disruption, and obviously they prefer not to undergo this for a second time should it be all pulled down again. For this reason, the other residents, occupants of the neighbouring properties, have not objected. In particular, the occupant at 154 could not object to the removal of the fence and building of the wall, as she was on holiday at the time, was not consulted. Finally, do the councillors really think that if the occupants of 152 had followed the correct procedure, that planning permission would have been granted, given the council's recommendations in the Planning Services Householders Guide? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Sharon Weigel, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Hi, I'm representing my parents today. The move to this bungalow took place to assist my ageing parents to maintain their own independence, but also to support their disabled son to be as independent as possible. As part of the purchasing process, we looked at surrounding houses and works that have been carried out, and this included looking around the loft conversion at number 154. We genuinely believed that planning permission was not required, and as such followed the requirements of a general permitted development order, which still requires building regulations to ensure high standards are being met, so it's not correct to say that conditions have not been imposed. We've reached the conclusion that the alterations could be made under a general permitted development order through conversations and advice from very experienced architects and reputable builders. However, Kirklees Building Control have been involved from the start of the project. Council officers have advised and supported this application throughout and have said the following. The footprint of the building has not been significantly enlarged and is well within the 3-metre rear projection they normally permit. Although the dormer is large, it falls within GPDO permits. It does not affect the setting of the listed building in the park, and it does not affect the street scene or views from any public land. So to be clear, none of the works we've done can be seen from the front of the property. There are no effects whatsoever on the public amenities. It does not affect the setting of the listed buildings in Ravensnow Park. And throughout the project, guidance and advice has been received from Kirklees Building Regulations, Yorkshire Water, Gas Safe, structural surveyors and other professionals. We are not a fly-by-night developer who's trying to avoid compliance. We genuinely thought we were doing everything to comply. We have obtained photos within a 100-metre radius of our property that demonstrates the normality of such additions to the dwellings in the area. 126 Ravensnow Road and 68 Lister Street are houses with dormers that overlook Ravensnow Park. 4 Oak Avenue and 126 Ravensnow Road have dormers both back and front of the house. Felcote Avenue and Ravensnow Road also have dormers that are clad in a
30 seconds.
grey material to ours. We can also demonstrate the restricted view from our dormer window, that it does not embed the privacy of the neighbours. I hope this shows that we've entered into this purchase and improvement with the best of intentions and followed the guidance available to us, and that councillors will look upon the application favourably.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got Smith, who's also speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Chairman and members of the committee, I have a lot of sympathy for the applicants in this particular application. Permitted development rights do allow a significant amount of extension on a normal house. In most cases, yes, there's a minimum of 3 metres which you would be allowed to extend on the rear of a property, extendable up to 6 metres with prior notification. In this particular instance, it's only 1.7 metres, and that's only partially across the rear of the building. So it is a very small extension at ground floor level. The reason why it does require planning permission is a little bit of an anomaly in the permitted development rights, in that because there was a small projection of the kitchen, it means that this extension is classed as a side extension. So you've actually got a rear extension which is classed as a side extension, and it's just one of the, as I say, it's an anomaly of planning. So normally this would be done without planning consent, and I can understand that the applicant didn't why they didn't apply for planning. The dormer window is scale-wise, it's less than 15 cubic metres. 30 is the permitted under permitted development rights. So yes, the materials of the grey cladding don't match the roof, but it's a red concrete double Roman tile, which is very difficult to match anyway. You wouldn't be able to clad the dormer in that type of material. So I do think that the grey cladding which has been used is inoffensive, it does match the windows, and it's a neutral colour, and I cannot see basically any issues, certainly of overbearing, loss of light, or loss of privacy to the neighbours. So I would like to ask the committee to go with the officer's recommendation and permit this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Homewood, then Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, I was just going to say that last time when we looked at it, I thought that this was acceptable for approval, and I think we obviously had a bit of a debate about how we got to that position, although I think we understood that it wasn't, specifically part of our considerations as to why it was retrospective and not. All the permission wasn't sought up front, but we've had some clarification on that today. So based on what I've seen, I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the site visit last time, not today. Yeah, on this, I've seen the extension on the back. I know the dormer window looks a bit bigger there, but it seemed to me it was very reasonable that time. And I know the applicant have made some mistake for not seeking further advice from the planning officer to where the applicant might thought it's a what they call permitted development right, and has been said by the supporter here. Can I have the evidence of, as one of the supporters said, there were another 6 dormer window nearby houses? Have any evidence of that?
Through you, Chair, we haven't got the visuals with us today, but in any case, this application has been assessed on its own merits, given the plans before you, and in that respect, officers have put forward a recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Chair. In the situation, I will support my colleague, Councillor Jane.
Councillor McGuinn.
Yeah, I was the councillor that brought it to the committee purely on the basis that there was no planning application in. I've got a lot of sympathy with the next door neighbour, but after listening to the arguments, I won't vote in favour of this because people shouldn't develop things without going through the proper procedure. So I can't support it. But then again, I can see what the planner, because I've talked to him about it, and he did explain what the process was. And after talking with him, I will abstain from the vote. But I can understand why the person who originally objected to it did object to it. And a lot of the objections are not strictly planning reasons as well. So on that basis, I will abstain on this vote.
If there are no further submissions, I've had it moved and seconded. What I would like to say is there was a mention I did hear with regard to blocking out light with it coming out. So I can understand, especially when they didn't get planning permission. Ignorance is never an excuse, as we all know. But I'll now put it to the vote. It's officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please show.
Keep your hands raised, please. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4.
Against?
1 against. The rest of us. Sorry, I do apologise. 2.
Abstentions? 2.
Application is approved.
Item 21, page 91, Almonbury Methodist Church.
Thank you, Chair. This application is brought before members at the request of Councillor McGuinn, as set out in the published committee report. Almonbury Methodist Church, visited by members this morning, presents a large, prominent building with an Almonbury conservation area, of which the roof is distinctly visible. The following images are images of the church. The application proposes replacing the existing copper roof, which is a weathered green, with a black Firestone rubber material. Ordinarily, such a material would not be considered acceptable on a prominent building within a conservation area. However, planning officers and conservation design officers have advised that they will be accepting of this material, provided that a textured finish can be achieved similar to the appearance of the existing roof. However, following exhaustive negotiations with the applicant has failed to satisfy that the desired finish can be achieved with the proposed material. Furthermore, planning officers are not satisfied that sufficient consideration has been given to alternative materials which present less harm to the Almonbury conservation area. Given the above considerations, the application is recommended for approval, for refusal. Beg your pardon. Nothing further, Chair.
We have Anne first.
Good afternoon, everybody. The roof on the main building of Almonbury Methodist Church is the original one from when the present building was completed in the late 1960s. In recent years, remedial repair work has had to be carried out to prevent leakage and to seek to ensure the integrity of the structure. However, with such works becoming more and more frequent, the Church Council decided that good stewardship of the building required that the roof be replaced, and the Church's Property and Finance Committee were tasked with facilitating this. The committee considered various options that were available and decided on the present scheme, which, although it was not the cheapest option, it was felt to be the more practical one, thereby ensuring the integrity of the roof structure in a more environmentally friendly manner and with limited need for future maintenance. The copper roof, which is on the building at present, is a flat surface, and as such, we are only replacing a flat surface with a flat surface, albeit not the same colour or material as at present. The contractor we have sought to do the work is fully aware that the church sits within Almonbury Conservation Area, and as such would not have suggested any roofing material at all which was not conducive with the area and its surroundings. We do have a church council meeting next week, and it will be wonderful if the Property and Finance Committee were able to report back to them with a positive outcome. And we therefore ask you to grant us the required permission so that the work can begin as soon as possible. In conclusion then, it was felt that our scheme reflected our duty of care to use our resources prudently, creating a finish of clean lines and simplicity that would be in keeping for such a building. And I thank you for listening and for taking time over this matter. Thank you.
Members. Yes, Councillor McGuinn.
As the person who's referred this, I suppose I'd better kick off. When I saw the application, I did go in to have a word with Tim Francis, who was the minister, and to be fair, the roof as it is at the moment, I'd hardly noticed it, and a lot of people have made the same remark. It's just it has been part of the landscape for quite a long time. You might say it's distinctive, but the reason why it's distinctive is because it wasn't intended to be green in the first place. The copper colouring was put on in 1969 to try and preserve the roof, and it was given a lifetime of 30 years. Well, it's done more than 30 years, so it's done its job. But the colouring of green is due to a reaction with acid rain. So that wasn't intended. I do not think that was the intended colouring of the roof. And I think, having talking to the planner as well, I think he's realised that to go for another copper again, it would be far too expensive. So we have got to look. The church had to look at a different surfacing of the roof. Now, as it said, Almonbury is a conservation area, and most of the roofing in the immediate area is of slate, grey and to dark slate. And the reason why the colouring has been chosen, as I understand it, is to fit in with the conservation area. Now, as I said, I did talk to Tim Francis, and I talked to Mr. I forgot your first name. Yeah, Francis. So I get confused. I do apologise. And we did have a conversation on the phone, and I think he understood that for cost purposes, they had to not have a similar or the same roof colour. It had to be changed. So he got involved in negotiations, and I understood what the negotiations were all about. And it's really why I asked for a site visit today was to ask the members to look at the roof and say, would a black roof fit in with the surrounding area? Now, I haven't declared my hand now, but I'm saying I think that the roofing envisaged would fit in with the Almonbury Conservation Area. That's my opinion. I can understand why Francis would say it doesn't. It's a distinctive roof, but I think it wasn't intended to be that colour. If we have a dark colouring, it will fit in with the conservation area. I have walked around the building from trying to see the planner's point of view, what we need to be looking at, and it's only from a few distinct areas that the green roof is prominent. From the village, for example, it can't be seen. We do have another church quite nearby to the Methodist Church, All Hallows, and unfortunately their roof needed repairing. And we've had a and might not be relevant, but they've had to spend a lot of money on about £100,000 on repairing the roof. Councillor Wilkinson might know more about this because she. But the fact is that Almondbury has had to raise money for one roof, for the All Hallows, and that definitely had to be a certain colour, and because of its historical value and because it's a listed building. This is not a listed building. It is in a conservation area, I grant you, but I think that the colouring chosen will fit in with the conservation area of Almondbury, and soon people will forget that we used to have a green roof on the Methodist Church. Thank you.
Councillor Sim.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know why our planner is insisting on copper. We know why copper was used, because in them days it was lighter than lead, and the structure of that roof at that time was quite a unique angular design. So they used copper. And copper, unfortunately, over the years is affected by acid rain, which turns it green and eats into it, and that's why the roof's gone. There's talk that the Biltel roof will not have the same texture, and that could be noticed. Well, I've looked round, and the only place I can see is like top of Westgate. You can just see it, and I doubt, unless they've a lot better vision than me, would be able to see any texture other than changing in slight colour. So I can't understand why a Biltel roof wouldn't be the appropriate thing to use. If you're talking about a texture where, as copper, when they did copper sheeting to link it together, they did that way, and it caused a seam. Now, that can be achieved by using Biltel. If you put underneath a Biltel either a metal or a wooden ridge, and it gives the same effect, if that's what you're wanting from this application. But we have to, these days, think about it. If you put a copper roof on there, it'll be shining bright, and I can guarantee within 3 months it'll be gone. And you know why. And we can't, we have to think, if you talk to the police and that, we have to think about these things today. We never used to have to think about them, but we do today. I'd like to ask the committee to support and grant this application for a Biltel roof, if needed, with ridges in that can be attained. And I think it will fit in, even in a conservation area. I've seen worse things than this allowed in a conservation area. You could put a new house up in a conservation area and use all sorts of roof materials, and you wouldn't be able to turn it down. So I hope members of this council will see the need to get this done, the lightness of what has to be put onto it, because the framework under those sort of roofs don't take a huge amount of weight. And it couldn't be tiled, for instance, or anything like that. So I just think that we should bite the bullet, and this should be granted, Chair. Thank you very much.
Councillor
I
Walker.
move that we accept and grant it.
Thank you, Chair. I do think the roof is an attractive and distinctive feature of the building, which enhances its appearance. And I do think that when it was put on, the architects and the people who commissioned it at the time must have known what was going to happen in terms of the colour, because that happens with every copper roof I've ever seen. I can understand the arguments against this in terms of the cost of replacing the copper roof, but I think losing that will lose an important feature in the conservation area. Thank you.
Councillor Homewood.
Yes, so my understanding is from what you've said is that the actual black roof is something that you've accepted. It's actually the fact that it's flat and there's no sort of, I don't know what the technical term is, but you can't see the separation between the different parts of it. My kind of understanding of what's been said here is that obviously the church are looking to be economical in terms of what they spend on it, and I just feel that in a time where council provides less services, there's less money around, community organisations, churches, etc., are important in communities. And I don't know this particular church, I don't know what they do, but I'm sure they do lots of good things within Almbury, and I just wonder, is it really sensible to say, we want you to spend more of your money that you may not even have to make a slight tweak to how a building looks, and actually does it make that much difference? And I just think in the thing you talk about, does the public benefit outweigh the harm caused? And I think there's an argument to say actually it does, because you want to have that church there that's been able to run things, that doesn't have a leaking roof, that has additional funds to spend on other more important things, in the community and so on, and for their congregation. So, and having been there as well, I don't see that it's going to look terrible, as Councillor McGuinn said. So, personally, I'd be minded to second your approval of that.
I don't think it's been proposed yet.
All right,
I've been spoken in favour of, but I didn't know it had been proposed. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Right, well, I'll take that then. You seconded it, Councillor Homewood.
Thank you, Chair. I think between, actually, Councillor Sims and Councillor Homewood have probably covered everything I had to say. What I was going to say is, would it be of a great cost to maybe put in, I don't know, a beam or a seam so it looks as if there is a join? And if it's, maybe the office could go back and talk to the church. Obviously, it needs to be quick, on whether that could be achieved. And if it could, then perhaps it could be conditioned.
Any further submissions? Yes, Councillor Wilkins.
Can I just? I read the report very closely. Am I thinking that it's not the material, it's the colour, the black?
No, we're accepting of the material and the colour. It's just a textured finish.
The texture.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a mover and a seconder to approve this application. All those in favour, please show. Against? Yes, a summary. I'm going to get a summary here from my colleague.
Chair, can I summarise that the reasons for approval is that members considered that the new roof proposed, the public benefit of that outweighs the less than substantial harm to the conservation area, and in addition the material in itself, as Councillor Sims said, would not be obvious in the street scene, and as Councillor McGuinn said, there are mostly dark roofs in the area and it's chosen to fit in. Councillor Sims also said about putting a ribbed roof in if that's what's wanted, and Councillor Bellamy also made reference to this, which is the similar pattern of texture as is in the copper roof at the moment. So we will go back and discuss that, and if that is possible, then we will agree that scheme. But from what's been said at the committee, the actual scheme that's been put forward has been approved. Thank you, Chair.
Right at this juncture, then, as I've mentioned earlier, we'll go back now to, because the PROW officers here, go back to item 17. That's the PROW regards Clayton Fields, Edgerton. Yes, would the three councillors like to depart?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Giles Cheetham and I am an officer of the Council working on public rights-of-way matters. Items 17 to 19 before subcommittee are not planning applications. They concern orders to modify a formal record of public highways called the Definitive Map and Statement, which records public rights-of-way. Item 17, members would likely recall that subcommittee decided last autumn to authorise officers to make an order under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to extinguish numerous alleged public paths across the site at Clayton Fields and provide alternative routes. An application that was made to enable development. That decision considered the merits of a proposed change, and the Council was entitled to decide to make an order for claimed unrecorded routes. Members were informed that those claims referred to 7 formal applications made to the Council under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. The matter reported to you today is one of those 7 Definitive Map Modification Order, or DMMO, applications. Since the subcommittee decision, the Secretary of State has directed the Council to make a formal determination on one of those 7 DMMO applications, reference number 183. A decision by subcommittee today would satisfy the direction deadline imposed by the Secretary of State on this particular DMMO application. In line with recent legal advice, officers intend to bring the other 6 DMMO applications before members. The officer report before you is for a decision on whether the available evidence, including over 80 witness statements, demonstrates that a public right-of-way subsists or is reasonably alleged to subsist. Although not an evidential consideration for members, officers would note that the landowner has not registered any opposition further to publishing of the officer report. For this particular claim, officers consider that at least a reasonable allegation has been made that a public footpath subsists, whilst noting the difference between the applicant's application plan and the physical position of the route historically. Appendix Y shows the route described in the officer recommendation, which is that a reasonable allegation has been made that a public right-of-way subsists over the route shown A to B in Appendix Y, which is on the screen. Thank you, Chair.
Members, the issue before you is simple. The public have used most of claimed public right-of-way 183 for as long as anyone can remember, and its entire length for at least 60 years. When I addressed this committee in October, the officer recommendation was to approve the developer's application for the closure or diversion of public paths on Clayton Fields, which included claimed public right-of-way, without considering the evidence submitted by the public. On that occasion, Legal Services advised a number of councillors on the Planning Committee to stand down. 3 councillors left the room. The committee approved the application. I discovered subsequently Kirklees had received a complaint from the potential developers of Clayton Fields against the councillors who stood down of bias. Having read the council's protocol since, I can find no grounds for upholding this complaint in the protocol's guidance and rules. I also note the public was not informed by Kirklees about this complaint before this committee sat on the 12th of October 2017, and to my knowledge, the public has not been informed since. Fortunately, I wrote to the Public Rights of Way Inspectorate before this committee met in October, asking for a direction to determine claimed public right-of-way 183. The Inspectorate issued a direction. This means the Council has to consider the evidence submitted by the public. That's the report assessing the evidence. As a result, on this occasion, I'm glad to see the officer recommendation has changed. May I make a recommendation? I would feel greater confidence in local government representation if I was sure this
30 seconds.
had walked the short length of claimed right-of-way 183 during its site visit before the committee made any decisions. I'm sure others would too. My confidence would increase further if I also knew the committee had tried to engage with the present report and its appendix, and had read the direction letter from the Public Rights of Way Inspectorate.
Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you.
Bill McGee, you'll just need to... Right.
Yeah, I could take this one. Oh. Are you going to put that in front of the people first? Yeah.
It's not new information, it's just a type version of Mr. McGee's previous representation. I'm just going to read now. For the benefit of the public, this document is just a typewritten version of Mr McGee's previous statement, which is included in the report, but which he's going to read again today, and he wants the members to see it written in front of them as he speaks.
Yeah, I cannot understand why the three councillors have been excluded from this meeting. I mean, where's democracy? I mean, these three councillors were representing Clayton Fields, or the public around Clayton Fields. So I would really like some formal explanation of this. I know the legal department did give an account, but I still don't understand what it was and why our representatives aren't allowed in. Because it means that when they're voting, if the vote is against us by these people, then our councillors can't give their opinions. It's ridiculous. However, nothing has changed from my previous statement in front of you, other than a map showing the proposed footpaths and a photograph of the woodland walk going from east to west towards St Patrick's School. And I would like the committee to peruse those things. I mean, they're pretty important, and it does show quite clearly the woodland walk. Really, that's about all I have to say, but do read my report. It's quite important. And I think more important is our councillors who represent us should not have been excluded from this meeting and should be allowed to vote. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The legal officer now will respond. I'd still like to put this to bed as it's happening. Thank you.
As I explained at the beginning, Councillor McGuinn has got an interest which prejudices his position here, and that's why he's left. The two ward councillors have had heavy involvement with this particular application, and I consider, and they agree with me clearly by their departure, that there is a perception of bias or predetermination, which is why they have chosen to leave the room. I haven't excluded them, but I've given them advice that there is a perception of bias.
They haven't chosen to leave the room. They were
I'm sorry, but you had your time. It came up. I've introduced the office as an extra for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We do have one more speaker. We have Mike Woodward, who's the chair of the Marsh Community Forum.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mike Woodward. I'm Chair of the Marsh Community Forum. Our Community Forum has been interested in the proposed development of Clayton Fields for a very long time. It's been discussed at every public meeting we've held in recent years. Local people have consistently acknowledged that Clayton Fields contains multiple footpaths and that these have been used regularly for very many years. Clayton Fields is a rare, undeveloped space in an otherwise densely populated urban area. It contains multiple footpaths. In addition, it also provides a valuable refuge for local wildlife. The mature woodland that runs to the north there of the indicated footpath along Clayton Dyke provides habitat for wildlife. I'm certainly not a naturalist, but I've seen owls and bats and foxes there, and I'm sure that there's much more. Retaining and recognising the footpath will mean that children and their parents attending the nearby school are able to walk to and from school, and that's something that I'm sure you'll agree we all want to encourage. Footpaths vary enormously. Some are poorly maintained and hard to find, some are narrow and overgrown, some are deliberately neglected and used as rubbish tips in the hope that they'll be forgotten. What we require in this instance is a footpath that is clearly signed and easy to use. If houses are built on Clayton Fields, then the footpath should serve as a green boundary separating the new housing from the mature woodland bordering Clayton Dyke. It will also be a reminder of the open space that has existed here for at least the past 250 years. I accept that people with responsibility for planning have a difficult job. We all recognise the need for more housing. We also recognise that it is necessary to stimulate growth and development. But these needs must be balanced against the need to protect the environment and to maintain public access. I think the Council has an opportunity to achieve a balance on this occasion. The Marsh Community Forum supports the recommendation of the officers on this occasion.
Thank you. Members, yes. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Marching.
From the evidence that we've seen, and very interesting to actually visit the site this morning, I think there is evidence, and I support the officer's recommendation, that I feel that the evidence is sufficient to authorise the service director to make a definitive map modification to record a public footpath. And I'd like to move that we support that.
Thank you. And that Councillor Sims. Councillor Marchington wants to.
Yes, I would have seconded that if given the opportunity. I think, again, what we're looking is at an evidence-based approach. To me, there seems to be clear evidence that path has been used sufficiently over a significant period of time for the definitive map modification order to be made, and I'm fully supportive of that decision being made today.
Just turn your light off, please. Doesn't seem to be anybody else, so I'll move to the vote. Then it's been recommendation, office approval. Please show you in favour. Thank you. Next item 18, page 63, Sellers Clough, Marsden.
Thank you, Chair. As As item 17, this decision relates to claims that unrecorded public rights are alleged to exist and ought to be recorded by the Council. An application has been made to the Council for an order to add public footpaths to the formal record of public rights of way at land at Sellers Clough, Marsden. The claimed routes run from the recorded public footpath by the Sellers Clough Mill buildings southwest to the canal towpath. So on the plan on screen at the moment, that's from point D via point C to both points A and B being locations on the Huddersfield Narrow Canal towpath. The Council has received 34 user evidence forms completed by witnesses. The landowner disputes the existence of public rights of way over the land, stating that the ways have been subject to gates and signs. The current landowner, Sellers Clough Property Limited, was not the landowner at the time of the DMMO application, which was made in 2009. Back in 2009, the landowner, Smith Developments solicitor, wrote to the Council to note that their client disputed the existence of any public right-of-way in relation to the application. On Tuesday this week, the current landowner's solicitor asked the Council to postpone consideration for 3 months, and I quote, to enable their client's case to be properly put. The solicitor's letter is at Appendix A of your update and states the Council needs to act fairly. It then identifies issues that are not considered to be fair. I've received a further email from the solicitor which states, I quote, we repeat, however, that it is unfair and unreasonable to proceed without affording our client a fair chance to consider and put its case. All our client and we expect is to be afforded a reasonable and fair opportunity to consider the matter and put our case. Officers would note that the Council letter of the 12th of January referred to in Appendix A, the solicitor's letter, that letter from the Council to the landowner is not a notice of the DMMO application. Notice of the application is not served by the Council, and the current landowner was not the owner at the time that notice was served by the applicant in 2009. The Council's letter identified an opportunity to provide the Council with any relevant information. The Council has received no written evidence or case since that date. Officers have provided details of the DMMO application and evidence to the landowner in line with previous advice from our legal and information access colleagues. To date, the landowner has submitted no evidence or detail of its case against the application, and in 2009, the landowner at that time submitted no evidence or detail of its case against the application. The Secretary of CCPL, the current landowner, informed officers that he has had a commercial role with an interest in the site since 2004. He also explained that the site had been subject to gates, locks, signs, etc., and that no public right-of-way existed. The Council has been directed to determine this DMMO application by the Secretary of State at DEFRA, and the deadline imposed on the Council by the Secretary of State has already passed. On current submissions, officers recommend the making of an order to add public footpaths, and in relation to the relevant tests described in the report, are not aware of any incontrovertible evidence that a public right-of-way does not subsist. Members may wish to consider the landowner's points on fairness and its request for a 3-month postponement. The applicant and its solicitor were made aware of the application and aware of the opportunity to attend this meeting and to address members. If an order is made, it will be advertised and there is a statutory period for objection. Opposed orders where objections are not withdrawn must be forwarded to the Secretary of State for a decision. Therefore, any decision of the Council today is not going to be a final decision in the face of formal opposition. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I want to speak very strongly against granting this delay. I think it's totally unnecessary. If the delay is granted, there will be a further delay while we would have the opportunity, as the applicant, to address the evidence put forward by those solicitors. So again, it would just drag on. Now, that's inconsistent, as the officer has said, with the direction from the Secretary of State, which was granted because Kirklees were taking an unreasonable time to decide the application. It's much better if the DMMO is made today in line on the basis of the officer's very clear report, and that the landowner can then remedy matters, if they wish, by making representations before the planning inspectorate. That's the appropriate procedure. Now, the great advantage of that is that it's in the control of the planning inspectorate. So they will fix a date for a hearing or a public inquiry and control the timetable for submission of evidence. All evidence has to be submitted before the hearing or inquiry, and they're a very experienced body they are, and very fair-minded. Yeah? And we can work to that, and we expect these solicitors to work to that. Most solicitors know nothing about rights of way, and the temptation is to put forward all sorts of arguments which have no basis in law at all, like problems about calls to the fishermen by people walking on the path. None of that matters. There is not one iota of evidence in the officer's report that this path does not have public status. Now, if I could just be emotional for a moment on behalf of the people in Marsden. Successive generations of Marsdeners have used this lovely path as a right-of-way without hindrance, and they resent tremendously the private notices, the barbed wire over trees, and the general dereliction around the path, and some also objectionable behaviour by some people around the lake. Yeah? I would draw your attention particularly to the statement of the former mill manager, Paul France, showing very clearly that the owners, successive owners of the site, accepted
30 seconds.
The public status of the route. Now, they don't do that lightly, because that's got operational implications for them. So if they accepted it totally, 3 generations, because his grandfather worked there as well, then they didn't do that lightly. Yeah? Right, I'll shut up then.
Thank you. Members. Yes. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I'd like to strongly support that. My father actually worked at the mill there in 1970, and 2 of my uncles, so there were 3 family members working there. And I do know that at their lunchtimes in the summer, they frequently used to use those paths to walk down to the canal bank to eat the sandwiches. I've also walked there a lot myself. I know that it's been used, as has just been stated, by people in Marsden and surrounding Combe Valley area for decades. I think there's lots of evidence, so I would strongly support that there is an order to modify the plans to recognise this as a public right-of-way.
Are you moving it to...
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second that. I also agree it is used a lot. I've walked it myself many times, and it is quite annoying when all of a sudden you come across a locked gate and barbed wire and everything else that seems to get put in its way, because it's constantly being blocked by several different owners over the past. So, like I said, I'll second Councillor Walker.
Nobody else wish to contribute? No, I'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? Recommendation.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. On to item 19, page 77, and it's Bridge Lane to Sands Recreation Home Firth.
Thank you, Chair. Item 19. Well, basically, officers would like to apologise to members for a couple of typo errors contained in the report to members of the 4th of January 2018 on the DMMO application, if you recall, at Bridge Lane to Sands Home Firth, so that's Home Firth Cricket Club, the Foundry, etc. Although the actual recommendation was correct, there were a couple of errant Roman numeral ones. So this report is brought before members to avoid any confusion in future and to ensure that this isn't put forward as grounds to dispute what the Council's doing or to dispute the decision that was already made. So members are asked to consider the report before you and are recommended to note the clarification and to reaffirm that an order to add a restricted byway is authorised to be made under section 53, subsection 3C1. Thank you, Chair.
Marching to, are you moving that? Thank you.
Seconding that, Chair.
All those in favour, please show.
Thank you.
Right. Page 99. Mills, Colne Road, Huddersfield.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nick Hurst, Planning Officer for this application. This application seeks the change of use and alterations which include a boundary fence of an office to 30-bedroom student accommodation. The site is on Colne Road, approximately 5 minutes from the university campus, which can be seen just in the top right here, with town centre just off image to the north. The building is currently vacant and has been so for in excess of 6 months. Immediately opposite the building is Woods Auto Trader with a car park to the frontage. This seam in the paving does form the boundary. Alterations to the building are minimal. Of note, the alterations include 2 feature windows, signage, and a fence is erected along the boundary with a bin store to the frontage. Internally, the flats are to be divided into groups of 5 ensuite bedrooms with kitchen and living facilities per 5-bedroom cluster. The report in front of members outlines the Planning Authority's considerations on the proposal. In terms of principle, the proposal includes the loss of an employment site which is within an priority employment zone. However, within paragraphs 10.5 to 1021 are considerations that lead to the conclusion that the site is no longer reasonably appropriate for employment use. The adjacent Woods Auto is a storage and distribution centre with ancillary offices. The proposed windows are to a specification that is considered sufficient to address noise pollution concerns from such a use. The application is brought to committee by request of Councillor Stuart Turner, as the proposal includes no parking and the concerns that this would have upon the local highway network. As student accommodation, officers do not object to the lack of parking. The site is within walking distance of local amenities, town centre and the university. Furthermore, arrangements for parking on moving-in day have been provided and can be secured via condition. These include moving in on a weekend when the adjacent business will be least busy or closed, the provision of a loading bay with gate along the shared access from Colne Road, and time slots for residents to ensure not all residents turn up at once. Turning to other considerations, including a visual and residential amenity, these are detailed in the report. In summary, officers raised no concerns. The proposal initially included an objection from the Environment Agency. As detailed within the update, this has now been addressed. 2 representations have been received in objection to the proposal. The concerns are as outlined in paragraph 7.2 of the report and are addressed within the assessment. Officers therefore recommend approval for the application. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Julie Stewart-Turner.
Right, good afternoon. In and among your packs, you should have a letter from Robert Halstead on behalf of All Autos. They raised some very valuable points in the letter, I think. Sadly, they couldn't be here to speak directly to you because they didn't get enough notice. I only knew about this meeting. This item was coming here yesterday morning. So they didn't have enough notice to be here themselves. So I did say I'd make sure you've got a copy of this and you've seen it. There's two reasons why I wanted to come and talk to you about this. Not just the highways. This site is a priority employment area. And I know the local plan's not been formally approved yet, but we're a long way down the line with years of fact-finding and research that's gone into it. And I do think we need to protect this corridor as an industrial area, as a priority employment area. And I am concerned that putting residential development in this site is going to dilute that. There's tons of evidence to justify the need for it to be that. That's why it's in the local plan now, gone through endless consultation. This residential unit that they've talked about, this building's only been vacant 6 months. That's nothing. Until 6 months ago, it was very well used by council staff as offices, IT centres. Many of you have probably been down there with your laptops or your iPads. It has got potential to be used for other things, I think. It doesn't have to be just student accommodation. There is, and when I talk about the highway stuff, you've been down there today, it's such a busy road, it's Colne Road, and there's no parking on site, and we've got problems all over the ward with student accommodation where it's thought, well, at this walking distance, they don't need any parking, so we won't give them any parking. But students have cars, they go home at weekends, they commute. So there's loads of conflicts all over the Newsham ward with parking. They also have family that visit. And where are the family going to go? How are the family going to go and visit? They have cab bags and things they have to lug around. It's not always easy to walk from the car park. And the car parks are not permanent features. They are development sites. They are sites that are earmarked for development, and they have temporary parking licences only. And the other point I'd like to make, which I think is made very clear in the letter from Robert Halstead, about the conflict on that road with industrial traffic in and out the site and sharing the same entrance as pedestrians. Even though there's a fence to try and protect the residents and students from the industrial site, they will be using the same access on and off of Colne Road. So you can have HGVs reversing into that site, and they might not be able to see the students walking to and from their accommodation. So I think there's great potential for conflict between the residential unit and the industrial units on that site, and we should be protecting those businesses in there and not being put in any restrictions or complications to help those businesses thrive down there. So that's all for me.
Thank you.
We have Andrew France, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Afternoon. Hello, Andrew Franz, representing AHR Architects for First for Lawyers. First for Lawyers are a Huddersfield-based company and have been established approximately 10 years in the Huddersfield market and provide advice across all areas of law, support 50 companies that they work with in the area and across the United Kingdom. A very established and well-trusted brand and seen by over 4 million people daily through their advertisements. They employ over 40 people in the Huddersfield headquarters, many of which are locals, and they strongly support the local economy. Very successful organisation and manage over 200,000 inquiries a year. First for Lawyers purchased Britannia Mills from Kirklees Council in 2007 after it had sat vacant, and I will say longer than 6 months, I'm pretty sure, several years since Children's Services moved out of that building. The purpose being to continue their approach to local investment and to see a long derelict building brought back into purposeful use. They intend significant investment to take place. We've already heard that from the planning officer, with a high-quality restoration and conversion to create the 6 studio apartments and 30 bedrooms. Extensive fabric repairs will be undertaken to the deteriorated building, including re-roofing, repointing, stone repairs, new entrances and doorways. And the intention is the building will be complete for the student intake in autumn 2018. We're very pleased that we've had a solid support from the Planning Department through this process, and that followed an independent assessment in terms of the viability of the uses for Britannia Mills that was undertaken during 2017 by Walker Singleton. And this actually highlighted little or no requirement for office accommodation within this area, and with limited options for alternative use, bar residential accommodation, to ensure the long-term economic viability of the building. In terms of the concerns raised regarding highways impact, these have been addressed in full and include clear marketing that highlights no parking is available on site, full provision of all white goods, furniture and equipment for students, a restriction on moving in and out of weekends only and within predetermined time slots, along with a dedicated loading and unloading area within the site of Britannia Mills. This has resulted in no objections being raised by highways. It's worth highlighting that the previous use for office had over 45 staff members in from Kirklees, with only 3 to 4 parking spaces on the site. This provision now will actually be a much better solution than the number of people moving in and out and crossing the highways that have been referenced earlier on by the councillor. The initial concerns have been reduced in terms of noise mitigation.
30 seconds.
EA environmental flood risk issues have also been dealt with, and they removed their objections last week. This proposal, through its high-quality restoration and conversion, will repurpose the vacant and deteriorating Britannia Mills and secure its ongoing future, and we commend the application and the Office's recommendations for conditional approval to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. I'm extremely worried that more and more industrial sites are being taken for domestic use and flats in Huddersfield. I just wonder, when saturation point, is it there or is it overkill? And I think it is. I think that this mill is on a good highway network for industry, which a lot of other places that's being converted are not, but this is. And I would hate to see this go for domestic use. We have to keep some employment land and some employment buildings, because in future a lot of our income is going to be derived from businesses, and Huddersfield is a place where businesses are starting to boom. I don't know how long they've advertised this site for, but I don't think it's as long. They haven't put it on the marketplace for that long to make such a decision that, you know, it can't be let or it can't be used industrial-wise. So I won't be supporting this application, Chair. I think sometimes we have to bite the bullet a bit, think of a strategic overview. If anything happens to the university, then we'll be dead in the water as regards the town, if everything in this town goes for student accommodation. I rest my case.
Councillor Stockwell, then Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, Chair, I will be speaking in support of the application, actually recommendation by the officer. The reason is this building is built in 1860, over 150-year-old building, right? We must preserve this building somehow. This building has been empty for some time. You have seen on the site visit all those windows have been bricked up there. It looks horrible there. And I understand Councillor Sims, my colleague, say this should be kept for industrial use. But I don't think this building is fit for the industrial and these days now, because all the industrial or commercial use has changed now. They all have been computerized and other things. They want a modern buildings, yeah? And I don't think it's any use for the office to turn into office, because they need some modern facility, but this building won't provide those facilities for these purposes. So I understand Councillor Julie Turner is concerned about the parking spaces. There's no parking space. I understand there, but we need to look into that. Are we going to keep this building and need some improvement for next future year, or we want to lose this really heritage building. So looking into all these aspects, that's why I'm come to my conclusion. I think I should support the application to to keep this building going on. We got this investor here to invest money, so we would like to see some improvement in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to take a longer-term view on this. There might not be at the moment demand for it for office accommodation, but that doesn't mean there might not be in the future. And unfortunately, if we pass today an application for residential accommodation, student accommodation, then I can't see a point in the future where this again will be used for employment land. And but there might be debates about whether it's industrial or not, but employment, we need to be careful about matching the employment development within Huddersfield town centre and student, accommodation, and it is primarily student and accommodation in this area. This committee, I think last year or the year before, did approve an accommodation on a former business site just along Cornvale Road. And there were arguments for and against that. But that part, further along, you actually are heading towards where there is student accommodation. You've got the university developments, and that makes sense. To me, it makes no sense to have this bit. This is accommodation in this particular area, part of on Cornvale Road. It is totally surrounded by business and employment areas. I can't think of any other accommodation. Even the old terraced accommodation that was on some of those roads, like you get on Firth Street or you get on some of the other roads. So I've got concern of it. The lack of car parking does particularly concern me as well, and I echo Councillor Stuart Turner's comments about, yes, fewer and fewer students have got cars these days, but I cannot believe that if you've got 30 apartments or studio apartments on this, you are not going to have at least 2 or 3 students with cars, and again, limiting their opportunities to move in and out to weekends in particular time slots, that does not bear the reality. And I was remembering back to my days as a student. Yes, I had a flat, lived in a flat without accommodation, but at least I could park there overnight on the double yellow lines, and as long as I remembered to shift it before 8 o'clock the following morning. And there's no, even with double yellow lines, you can move your stuff in and out. That doesn't appear to be the case here. So that would concern me significantly about it. And I can understand the planning officer's point about, if you just, you can use public transport, you can walk into town, that bit works, but the other bits, in terms of it being accommodation, for me, doesn't work. I suppose the last thing is about what the strategic overview is. And I know it's not allocated in the UDP, but we do, as a planning committee, need to have some overview about which parts of particularly Huddersfield Town Centre are used for employment, which are used for industry, and which are used for accommodation. Sometimes it'll be definitively zoned, sometimes there'll be an opportunity for a mix. I don't think this particular application works. Thank you.
Any further submissions? Councillor Holmwood.
Yeah, I understand the argument about the use and should it be used as employment space, and I don't know. I guess this report's saying that you guys think it's appropriate for that to be taken off. I do think the parking stuff seems to me like a red herring though, because how many hundreds of units of student accommodation is there in that area, and how many parking spaces are there? Are we saying now that every time there's a student a flat, you've got to have a parking space? You need thousands and thousands of them. And actually, I live just up the road from there. The issue in terms of parking is more people, students and people who are employed, parking where they can for free and walk into the town centre as a commuter, rather than students who live in halls and are trying to find somewhere to park the car. So I think, I don't know the overall impact of how many students are commuting because they don't have accommodation or whatever. But I kind of think that's a red herring, and again, there wouldn't be any parking if it was to be used as office space anyway. You'd have to park in the pier car parks across the road. So, I would be minded to support Councillor Sokol and second his recommendation to approve it.
Councillor Sokol, I didn't recall that you'd moved it. You did move it. Yeah. You spoke in support. You've moved it. So Councillor Holmwood, you're seconding it.
Yeah.
Approval. Right. All those in favour, please show. Approved.
That application is approved. Chair's casting vote.
Page 115. New Road, Kirklees.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is a corner plot at the junction of New Road with St John's Avenue. It accommodates a two-storey stone building which, although now vacant, was a former Kirklees Liberal Club. The main building has in the past been extended with single-storey extensions to the side, here, and to the rear, as shown in light grey on this plan. These photos show the single-storey flat roof extensions to the side and to the rear with a car park forecourt to the southern boundary along St John's Avenue. The site adjoins residential gardens along the northern and eastern boundaries. This photo shows the relationship with number 40 St John's Avenue to the east. And this shows the relationship with number 16 New Road to the north. That's the front of the application building. This is a view looking up St John's Avenue, giving some context of the surrounding area and properties on the opposite side of the road. This is an existing floor plan where you can see the main part of the building is here. These are extensions here and here. That's the first floor plan and the cellar plan. These are the existing elevations. This is facing onto St Andrews Avenue, and this is front of the building. The proposals are to basically demolish most of the single-storey rear and side extensions, erection of a two-storey rear extension, which will be set in 3.5 metres from the northern boundary from this point to here, and will project out 9 metres from the main part of the building here and here, leaving a distance of 2.5 metres to the eastern boundary from here to here. The proposals will provide internally 7 apartments with 3 on the ground floor and 3 on the first floor plan here and 1 in the roof area of the two-storey extension as shown here. The next 2 slides give an indication of how the proposed extension would look. So this is facing onto St Andrews Avenue. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Peter McBride for the reasons set out in paragraph 1.1 of the agenda. A site visit was carried out by members this morning. The site is unallocated on the UDP and draft local plan and falls within the prescribed middle consultation zone of a hazardous installation. 2 representations are received from the adjoining neighbours. One is in support. The other, from number 16 New Road, sought clarity on the impact, on the likely impact on their amenities from the proposed two-storey extension. In terms of visual amenity, officers consider the design together with the appropriate facing materials would be more in keeping with the host building than the existing extensions. As such, in the siting shown, the proposals would not detract from the visual amenity of the surrounding areas or the character of the main building. In terms of highway safety, adequate parking and bin storage could be provided on site. Highway officers do not raise any concerns, and subject to conditions, the proposals will not give rise to highway safety concerns. With regards to amenity of neighbouring dwellings, it is considered the proposals would not cause adverse impact on the amenities of number 40 St John's Avenue to the east. However, due to the scale, bulk, mass and siting of the two-storey extension with a projection of 9 metres, officers consider this would, in the opinion of officers, impact adversely on the amenities of number 16 New Road to the north and potentially result in loss of light to the private amenity areas of number 16, failing to accord with policy D2 of the UDP, policy PLP24 of the draft local plan and guidance in the MPPF. In addition to this, there are concerns from Health and Safety Executive who raise concerns and advise against the granting of permission as set out in full in the agenda. To summarise, officers' recommendation is for refusal for the 2 reasons set out in the agenda. If I can bring members' attention to the contents of the update, which include comments from the Kirklees group as requested by Councillor McBride. The agent has also made comment in response to the Health and Safety Executive advice and requests the application be deferred to address these issues. It is important to point out, to address the Health and Safety Executive concerns, the scale of development will need to be reduced significantly so that it does not exceed 40 dwellings per hectare. Should members consider the health and safety reason for refusal is unreasonable, then it would be necessary to refer back to the Health and Safety Executive, allowing them 21 days from notice for them to consider the matter further and enable them to consider whether to request the Secretary of State call the application in. Thank you, Chair.
We have Malcolm Sizer, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. 2 reasons for refusal are recommended by officers, the first being the impact on the amenity of the occupiers of number 16 New Road, and the second reason being concern raised by the Health and Safety Executive. Whatever your view on the first matter is, I would ask that the application is deferred and delegated to officers to resolve the second issue one way or another before any decision is issued. This is on the basis that my client will use the opportunity, so far not given because of lack of time, to provide argument as to why there will not be a significant increase in risk given the previous use as a club. With regard to the impact on the occupiers of number 16 New Road, it will be noted the officer's report includes that the occupier of number 16, quote, sought an explanation of the proposals to assess whether they would have an impact on number 16 New Road and the amenities currently enjoyed by the occupiers of this property. Clarity was also sought on the position of window openings to and overlooking into private amenity areas. There is no indication in the officer's report and in the presentation you've had today that, no doubt having received a response from the council, the occupier actually raised any objection. In respect of the impact on number 16, I accept that there are pluses and minuses. The single-storey extension comprising the concert room and ancillary rooms currently runs along the whole of the common boundary of the back garden of number 16. That will all be demolished. Instead, the boundary will be marked by a 2-metre high close-boarded timber fence. The new 2-storey extension will generally be set in some 5 metres from that boundary, giving greater openness immediately adjoining number 16. It is debatable what the balance is in terms of the neighbour's amenity between what currently exists and what is proposed. But what also has to be taken into account are the benefits the proposal will bring, as noted in the officer's report, to to the character and appearance of the local area, improved car parking and less noise and disturbance than would have been experienced when the club was in operation. Further, it should be noted that Councillor McBride welcomes the housing provision this provides. I would urge you not to refuse the application as recommended, but to delegate approval to officers on the, so long as there's no call-in by the Secretary of State. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members.
And then I'll start.
Councillor McGinn.
I'm involved with developing neighbourhood plans in Lepton, and as a member of Kirklees Parish Council, the Kirklees are trying to formulate their own neighbourhood plan. So I was really interested in what they had to say about the plan for this building, and it seemed as though they are supportive of this because it's making use of a former building, and it's creating more places for people to live in. I did take note, though, that they weren't happy with it being seven flats. They would be happy with it being 6 flats. So I took that to mean that they would like to see the back lowered, so it was only 1 story, because I do feel it would be a big imposition on the next door. So therefore, I think I could support this application on the proviso, on the condition that they reduce the number of flats to 16 and take into account that it should be lowered at the back, if that's acceptable.
I've just been advised that it wouldn't be the same scheme with 6, but I mean deferment was mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know what members feel about.
Yeah, I will move deferment on, if you want, and say, look, can we negotiate down to 6?
Is that seconded? All those in favour? Go. Right, we'll move on to the next one.
Chair, can I just
Sorry?
Chair, can I just clarify that you've asked officers to go, you've deferred the, or members have deferred the application for them to go back to the applicants to ask them to reduce the scale of the development to 6 apartments that may include alterations to the roof or the actual projection of the building. During that time, do you also want us to go back to the HSE regarding the matters that the agent has raised and why the objection should be reconsidered? Thank you.
Right, page 127, 2 Romsey Close, Linley.
Thank you, Chair. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Carl Burke for the reasons set out in the agenda. A total of 7 representations have been received, the concerns of which are summarised in the agenda. The site is unallocated on the UDP and the publication draft local plan. The application red line relates to a modest, irregular-shaped plot currently accommodating a detached dwelling with garages set back into the site, as shown here. There is a public right-of-way which runs parallel with the eastern boundary from Romsey Close to Cowrakes Road along the eastern boundary here. The following slides are photos from within the site showing the relationship with the neighbouring properties. This is a photo looking into the site with looking down the existing drive. You can see the existing dwelling and garages there. This is the western boundary with properties beyond. This is the eastern boundary, which runs parallel to the public right-of-way with the dense hedge. That would be removed. This is along the southern boundary, and then looking back onto the existing house within the site. Again, this is looking back up towards the northern boundary from within the site. This is the south-eastern corner of the plot. This is looking from within the site onto the properties beyond the western boundary. This is bungalows on Crossland Road and a quite recent two-storey apartment block there. So the application is seeking permission for 2 dwellings. This layout shows the siting of one of the dwellings in the southeast corner of the plot here with a detached garage, the other in the northeast part of the site here up against the public right-of-way. This plot will be served by a new vehicle access point onto Romsey Close and a realigned access to serve the existing dwelling and plot number 1 here. This plan also shows the floor elevation plans for plot number 2, which is the plot here. It is intended to externally face this dwelling in stone to match the existing dwelling on site. This plan relates to the dwelling proposed to the front, which will be 2-storey with integral garage. If you can just point out to the dimensions shown on this plan here, it says it's 21 metres from the front of the existing dwelling through this dwelling, plot number 2. In fact, when you measure the distances, it's 16 metres at ground floor from the sunroom there to the habitable room facing window of the existing, and 18 metres from the main part of the building to the existing. This fails to accord with policy BE12 of the UDP, which sets out that normally a distance of 21 metres will be the minimum acceptable distance between habitable facing openings. This plot also fails to achieve a distance of 1.5 metres from the side elevation there to the site boundary there, parallel with the footpath. Given this and the relationship between the existing dwelling, officers are of the opinion the inclusion of plot number 2, the proposals would not only result in a cramped form of development which would detract from the surroundings but also provide limited external areas for plot number 2. The amenity areas to be provided would be directly overlooked from the existing dwelling. For these reasons, the proposals will be harmful to the visual amenity and residential amenities of the occupiers of the existing dwelling as well as future residents of plot number 2 and conflict with the policies D2, B1, B2, B12 of the UDP and policy PLP24 of the draft local plan and one of the core planning principles in the MPPF. If I can just point out that permission was also granted in January 2016 for a dwelling in the far part of the site here. The current proposals provide a modified dwelling to this in comparison to what was approved, but officers' concerns relate mainly to the developing of the front part of the dwelling. To conclude, the recommendation is for refusal for the reasons set out in the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cahalbert.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for including this for consideration today and also for the site visit. The proposal on this scheme would result in 2 additional dwellings, which has just been outlined, which this site, I believe, can adequately support, therefore not be contrary to any relevant planning policies. And that should have been seen today during the site visit. The site is unallocated on the UDP. On such sites, there is a presumption in favour of development. One of the core principles of the NPPF are that planning should always seek to secure high-quality design, good standard of amenity, which this scheme also demonstrates. The site is located within a predominantly built-up area, as you have seen on the site visit today. You would have been able to see the other properties in relation to this one, which was also mentioned on the corner of Romsey, or the flats that are there, which are very close to the public highway, to the footpath, and have no amenity. These proposals would be making efficient use of the land as it is. On section 10.14 for the highways issues and 10.15, it demonstrates that adequate parking and areas for turning on site to accommodate the existing and proposed dwellings are available and as such accord with the policies and guidance. So there's ample opportunity for parking on site, for turning on site. There are 2 garages. The back property has a double garage and also for 2 spaces, and the garage does fit a car, unlike planning permission that has been granted for properties nearby, which are just for storage. The property to the front has also got its own access and 2 spaces. If this particular site and area was to be used by some of the developers which are developing much of the green fields in Linley at the moment, they would probably be able to put in 8 townhouses without any problem. I believe, and I would ask that this scheme, I think the scheme would not have a detrimental impact on residential or visual amenity, highway safety or the character of the area, and I would urge you to support the application. Thank you.
Mark Colson, who's the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. The existing site is a large area of about 0.21 hectares and contains the one 4-bedroomed house with attached houses and garage. The original draft proposal we took to Kirklees in 2015, we had discussions relating to two houses, and no significant issues were identified by Kirklees at the time, and it was agreed that the applications would be phased to avoid replication of issues, etc. So we first proposed the large 4-bedroomed house to the south-east corner, and that was approved by Kirklees Planning in 15th of January 2016. In preparing the design for the house at the front, it was then also decided to amend the design of the approved house to make them both a similar design. So the original house was made a little bit smaller and style changed a little bit. When this application was then submitted to Kirklees Planning in July 2016, the case officer considered the new house to be overdevelopment of the site, although the proposal was within Kirklees UDP guidelines for distances between habitable windows. We then went through a number of variations to try and address any perceived issues and issues identified. This included reducing the size of the house and also repositioning it to minimise visual impact. The final scheme as submitted now and in front of you is now proposed as a much smaller and simpler house with a full-size single garage sited well away from the bungalows and in line with the adjacent semi-detached houses down Romsey Close. So, as such, this property now is similar in character to other new properties nearby and creates minimal visual impact. It sits well within the existing site and provides good amenity for a good modern family home. It provides off-road parking for at least 2 cars as well as a full-size garage, and leaves adequate access to both the proposed and existing houses behind. We hope we have demonstrated this morning by the marking out that this smaller house would not constitute overdevelopment of the site. While the house is close to the footpath on the eastern side, this has not been raised as an issue by highways, and also because the house is now smaller, it conceivably could be moved
30 seconds.
Further away from the boundary if that really was a serious issue. The site clearly supports, is clearly suitable to accommodate 3 detached 4-bedroom family houses with above average amenity and off-road parking. As this development will also assist in fulfilling the current housing shortfall in Kirklees, I appeal to you to support this application. Thank you.
Members. Go.
Thank you, Chair. Am I looking at this right? Is this a garden? Right. I thought there was the law's been changed about building in gardens nowadays from what it used to be.
Through you, Chair, it used to be that gardens were considered as previously developed or brownfield land.
Yeah.
Gardens are now considered as greenfield land. That doesn't mean there's a policy against development, it just means the classed as greenfield. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would support Officer's recommendation on this one.
I took that as moving it, yeah. Any further submissions? No, I'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour, please show.
For.
Against? Right.
Refused.
137, and it's Lowergate Paddock.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Senior Planning Officer. This is an application for full planning permission for the erection of 16 dwellings, including 2 vehicular access points, 48 parking spaces and landscaping. The proposal also involves demolition of the existing double garage that's on the site, erection of new boundary treatments, works to the public right-of-way, public footpath that crosses the site, and level changes. The recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions. The site, as can be seen in this aerial photograph, was occupied by St Bridget's Church and Vicarage. The church, I hope you can see my cursor there, was at the west end of the site. The presbytery was at the east end of the site. However, those 2 buildings have now been demolished. The site is now largely vacant. There is still a double garage on a hard standing close to the centre of the site. That's the site's only surviving building. Most of the site is therefore previously developed or brownfield land. The site slopes downhill from Lower Gate towards the railway to the south. Some regrading and changing of levels has already been carried out to provide a flat area at close to the centre of the site. Parts of the site are overgrown with trees and shrubs, but no tree preservation orders cover trees on the site. As mentioned before, a public footpath runs through the site, connecting Lower Gate to Armitage Road in Millsbridge via a footbridge over the railway. Surrounding uses are residential to the north and west, with a manufacturing industrial unit, Metrodent, to the east. The Millsbridge Conservation Area covers land to the southwest of the application site. The application site is just up there. There is no pavement directly outside the site on the south side of Lower Gate. These are views from Lower Gate. There is, however, a bus stop on the south side of Lower Gate, but obviously no pavement space for users of the bus service to wait. At part of the site, outline planning permission has previously been granted in 2005 for demolition of the presbytery and erection of residential units. That permission has, however, now expired. These are more images of the site. There's a row of terraced stone-built houses on the north side of Lower Gate. And you'll notice that residents at the moment park on the curb, on the pavement, on the north side of the street. This is a view from on the opposite side to the south of the railway lines, looking northwards to the site. A view from the footbridge, looking northwards. Again, looking northwards along the public footpath that crosses the site. The steps where the footpath connects to Lower Gate. And again. Now, in terms of the proposal, in terms of land use and the principle of development, there are no relevant adopted or emerging planning policies or allocations that prohibit residential development of the site. Regarding the past uses of the site, or part of the site, as allotments, given that local need is currently being met, the proposal is compliant with UDP policy R9. In terms of design, the proposal as amended has been designed to adequately respect the heights and elevational treatments of the stone terrace of houses opposite. All dwellings would have 2-storey front elevations. Rear elevations would be 3 or 4 storeys due to the site's topography. Although the provision of a large number of parking spaces at the front of the site is a concern in relation to streetscape impacts, this impact can be minimised with suitable boundary treatments and landscaping. Artificial stone has been referred to on the submitted drawings. However, it's recommended that natural stone be secured by condition, and the applicant today has accepted this. In terms of residential amenity, adequate distances would be maintained between new and existing dwellings to ensure there would be no unacceptable loss of natural light, outlook or privacy. The proposed dwellings would also have an adequate level of amenity. In terms of highways and highway safety, which has figured largely in residents' concerns about the application, those concerns regarding highway safety are noted. However, adequate visibility displays are proposed at the 2 vehicular entrances. Refuse vehicles would not enter the site. The predicted additional vehicle movements, which will be 10 in the AM peak and 8 in the PM peak, as forecast by the applicant, would not have a material adverse impact on the local highway network. On-site parking will be adequate and policy compliant and would obviate the need for double yellow lines being provided on the south side of Lower Gate. The proposed new pavement would be formed from part of the application site and is welcomed. Drainage matters are yet unresolved, as the applicant proposes to pump surface water to the combined sewer beneath Lower Gate, whereas a gravity solution would be more appropriate. This matter, however, need not delay determination of the application, and a relevant condition is recommended. Although all of the site's trees would be felled, none are protected and replacement planting is proposed. The ecological impact of the proposed development is acceptable, subject to conditions. Concerns have been expressed regarding the treatment of the footpath. Those concerns were expressed by the Public Rights of Way officer and the Police Architectural Liaison officer. I'll just draw members' attention and zoom in on these sections through the public footpath. Section FF at the bottom here illustrates how tall stone walls and 1.8 metre high timber fences are currently proposed to enclose the public footpath at its south end where it approaches the footbridge. This is considered unacceptable. However, these aspects of the development, landscaping, changes to levels and boundary treatments can be addressed through conditions and amending conditions at condition stage if permission is granted. 4 units of affordable housing and a contribution to public open space and towards Metro card provision would be secured in a recommended Section 106 agreement. 4 objections have been received from neighbouring residents. Then 3 more were received at reconsultation stage. Councillor Hilary Richards has also commented on the application. As set out in the report, however, matters raised in these objections and comments have been addressed or are not considered to be reasons for refusal or justification for seeking further amendment. Approval subject to conditions is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
We have Grant Scott, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. As I'm sure you've already been aware during your recent site visit today, the application site is in a very poor condition. Overgrown, covered with self-seeded trees, evidence of fly tipping and poor quality undergrowth, offering little in terms of amenity and wildlife habitat. The public footpath through the site is dangerous at its junction with Lower Gate. It's dark, intimidating, due to overhanging trees and undergrowth. This is exactly the type of underused site in sustainable location set in an existing developed environment that central government advice should be developed, rather than resorting to peripheral or greenfield sites. The proposals offer a development of much needed family and affordable housing in this area. The development would also open up the site, offer views across the valley, a safe new footpath along the length of the site, and the relocation of the dry stone wall which currently bounds the edge of the highway. New high-quality maintained planting with specimen trees will provide enhanced visual amenity and improve the wildlife habitat. All of this will contribute to improving the local environment for residents. We've worked closely with the Planning Department on the development of this scheme over the last few months in order to provide a well-balanced scheme which benefits all concerned. We support your officer's report and request that this committee follows the recommendation to approve this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. This site has been derelict for a long time, and it is an absolute eyesore coming into when you're travelling between Paddock and Milnes Bridge. I think it represents actually a very good land use. I'm really pleased that you've got by condition the use of natural stone, which means that over time those buildings will blend in. It seems to be a good use, good land use. I also appreciate the inclusion of the footway within the boundary of the development. There's no footway at the moment, particularly residents who are waiting for the bus or getting off the bus. They're just in the road. So the provision of that actually will significantly improve highway safety. Parking on the opposite side of the road is an absolute nightmare, and other than widening the road, I do not know what you can do. There are times when you just cannot see from one end to the other whether it's safe to go. We have in the past as well, councils actually looked for attempted improvements, but I cannot see this particular development being made any worse. But care needs to be taken during development because it will have significant impact. Again, the issue around the fencing out the side of the footpath, agreed totally with the police, what the police have said, the architectural liaison officer. If that footpath has not got a reasonably open aspect, what you're going to have significant amounts of littering, and it's a potential for antisocial behaviour. So I think it's right through landscaping to do that. Right, I will express my concern about any development in this area. Lowergate is one of the significant routes in between Huddersfield and Milnes Bridge. It's an in and out. Whilst it is only 10 vehicle movements in the AM and the PM peak, anyone who travels that route on a regular basis knows that the length of traffic queuing, particularly to get from Lowergate onto Longwood Road, is significant. And at times you will have traffic backing up to the parked cars opposite Metrodent, which means that you cannot, people travelling one way or the other will not be able to do that. And at some stage, you're going to have a cumulative impact. And I'll go back, he's not here, Steve Thompson, he's not here today. I do have concerns about the cumulative impact, and we know through the local plan that there are other planned developments at the bottom of Lowergate in the Longwood part of this area, and it will become a problem at some stage. We did try to sort out in the past issues about the junction between Lowergate and Longwood Road. The treatments have not worked as were planned, and that's a concern. So whilst welcoming aspects of, actually the land use, the design and the layout, I think that's really good. At some stage it will have, this will contribute to the significant traffic problems we have both at Paddock and at Milnes Bridge. Thank you.
Councillor Walker, then.
Yeah, as a councillor for the adjoining Combe Valley ward, I very much support the comments made by Councillor Marchington. I travelled along the road by the development for nearly 30 years, and I know the kind of problems that you find there at rush hour, both morning and evening. I think it's really important that we have double yellow lines on the south side of the road. I think that was mentioned as a potential condition when we were out on the site visit. And I also share the worries about the amount of traffic using that road and the junctions at either end. The site itself, I take the point that it's not going to add significantly to the number of journeys, but the point that we sometimes miss with these things is the cumulative effect of other housing developments. So So there's a very, very extensive degree of housing taking place in Linthwaite and Crossland Hill, potentially. Well, in actuality and potentially. We've got further housing developments proposed here in Kirklees, and many of those houses that cars from them will be using those particular roads. And I think we should look at that and think about what's happening with the adjoining junctions.
Yeah, Chair. I remember this site used to have a small building, church building, and there was a adjacent car parking area. But since this church building had been demolished and the car park's gone, and this site has become very derelict with grown-up bushes and self-seed planted seeds, yeah. But I welcome this development on this side because it will enhance the area, and I'm happy the builder proposed creation of a pavement on this side. There is no pavement at the moment, and improvement this footpath going right down to the bottom. But I would like to add double yellow line has been asked by the Councillor Hillary and others, because it's a very busy road. We need a yellow line. We don't want a double parking. But some people might think, oh, they park on the new pavement. So we need to put the double yellow line to deter those people not to park. But one thing I'm not clear, Chair, about this contribution of open space off-site, some of 80,000. So where will be the open space, or it will be just contribution where they go?
Through you, Chair. Given that the site is, I believe it's 0.54 hectares in size and quite a long, thin shape, we didn't consider it appropriate to secure public open space on site. Instead, we are recommending that a contribution of £84,350 be included in the Section 106 agreement. That would most likely be spent locally at the Douglas Avenue Recreation and Play Space, which is within walking distance of the application site.
Within walking distance, where?
Douglas Avenue. It's to the north of the application site.
I'm not sure about that. Anyway.
Can we move on then, Councillor Sokol?
I mean, there is a few houses like that, 16 or whatever number. We need some play area for children to play within those housing. Anyway, I'm still happy with our support the application. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree that something does need doing with this site. I mean, whatever it is, a mess, and the public footpath is well hidden and all the rest of it. So I'm not against development on this site, but I would like some action taken, especially with the police concerned about opening the footpath up and making it a lot more, friendly, and maybe stop the problems down there. I'm not convinced about double yellow lines because, to be honest, the houses across the road, where else are they going to park? They only have on-road parking, so I'm not convinced about that at all. Obviously, the drainage needs to be sorted. That's going to be an issue. Water tends not to pump uphill. It will flow down. So I think that needs negotiating, and so the drainage runs down into a sewer and not have to be pumped up. I think that could be a
So, Councillor Bellamy, can I just interject there? With regard to the double yellow lines, they will be on the side of the new build. They won't be on the existing. So, to not,
yeah, I still think
because they need somewhere to park to those houses which
I
I think
still
you've said.
think it might cause a few problems. So I'm still not convinced about the double yellows. The other thing I do think is there any way you can get the developer to perhaps provide some grit bins? When all's said and done, it's on a hill. And it gets quite bad up there in the winter. So if you could get the developer to provide some grit bins with grit in them for a few years to go on that site as well, and that could be conditioned, then, to be honest, I'd probably be quite happy. I don't know.
I believe with regard to the grit bin, we can't really enforce that, but what we can do, there's going to be some monies there, isn't there, the 86,000 or whatever. I'm sure some of that, well, it won't take much of that, can be taken from that. I hear that I've spoken wrongly, and we can't provide or can't take that money for grit bins. So I'm just wondering where we seem to be getting stuck on the highway business with regard to the safety here. I'm just wondering if you'd like to come in, Peter.
Okay, through you, Chair. Just a clarification of the yellow line issue. Highways aren't recommending any action, but I think members are keen to control parking along Lower Gate. I think the proposal is for a yellow line on the south side of the road only, though, because parking has to be maintained on the north side for the existing residents. Yep. In relation to grit bins, etc., don't know. We can take that away and look at it. Any other clarifications needed?
Councillor Marchington, you'd like to?
I can understand why members of the committee and other people are suggesting double yellow lines or yellow lines on the south side of Lowergate. I very rarely make unequivocal statements, but in 40 years I have never seen a vehicle permanently parked on the south side of Lowergate. Should anyone choose to do so within the site of the application, the road is not wide enough for 3 vehicles to pass. So most of the parking spaces on the north side, outside the terraced houses, are they're used. No vehicle, nobody in the right mind would stop on it. And the only vehicles that tend to stop, and Councillor Circle probably that bit, are the buses. So you get buses stopping out the front. And then you just wait. You have to wait until the carriageway is cleared before you move on. So if we are looking at other potential highway improvements would be appreciated. I don't think that double yellow lines. I think you're trying to sort out a problem that doesn't exist. If we think by causing development people are more likely to park on the south side, then yes. But can we please look at the whole, well actually all the way back up to Paddock, because that is where there are more significant parking issues, and I have tried for years and years and years to get double yellow lines put in outside certain properties, and that has been turned back, not back and that. And actually there are places through to Paddock where it would be a benefit, which would improve traffic flow and actually accessibility onto Lowergate. The issue about the landscaping, I think, again, Douglas Avenue play area is probably the most, but actually there's this public open space at Paddock, which needs maintaining, improving. The Combe Valley Area Committee several years ago, improvements down there. For some children, it might be appropriate to spend some of that money at the Crow Lane recreation ground. You've got children, those are both within walking distance. There's a bit of flexibility about that £86,000 in terms of things. I think I would appreciate that. The density of those houses is half what it is on the north side. There's 40 back-to-backs and terrace properties on there. Actually, the layout does make, is a good use of visual meaning and you do, actually, there's quite an open aspect on the south side going down to the railway. And if you live in one of those houses, you get a lovely view over the Combe Valley and Europe. And I hope you'll have a garden as well. I'll tell you the other thing I didn't say about the design. I like the 2-storey on the roadside and the 3-storey on the valley side, because actually to me that shows good land use. You're using the topography as opposed to working against it. So I think that covers the 3 points I wanted to make, following what other colleagues have said.
An added plus is the fact as well the affordable housing is 25%, which is in excess of our 20%, which is only to be uploaded. So we're at the stage now where I'd like somebody to move something or other. Move approval. Is that seconded? Seconded. All in favour? Thank you. Page 161, Fullwood Drive, Golka.
Thank you, Chair. With your agreement, Chair, I'd like to present information relevant to 2 applications at the same time. That's items 26 and 27. Both applications relate to sites proposed to be accessed from Fullwood Drive. I'll refer to each as, or the individual sites as the east site and the west site, and I'll distinguish between the 2 applications when providing information about the applications where necessary. The sites are adjacent to each other. They are the subject of separate applications, separate applicants and separate submissions, but they are connected in many ways. They are illustrated in these 2 location plans on the first slide here. Access to the east site is proposed across the west site. The 2 developments, if approved, would have cumulative impacts, and development of both sites by a single developer is possible, if not likely, if outline planning permission is granted. Therefore, it's appropriate, officers believe, to consider the applications together, although obviously 2 separate decisions will need to be made by the committee. This slide is a view of Golka from Copley Bank Road. I should clarify that the rough red lines indicating 4 different sites here are very approximate. Please, members, don't take that as an accurate depiction of the extent of each of these 4 sites. Going from left to right, we have the existing development at Fullwood Drive, which comprises 21 residential units. Then we have the west site, one of the application sites under consideration today. Then the east site, and then finally, on the right-hand side, a development site accessed from Cartop Lane, also known as land to the south of 39 to 49 Cartop Lane, where a 16-unit residential development is currently under construction. Further downhill to the south is Brook Lane. Both sites are within the Golka Conservation Area. I hope you can see the cursor. The 2 sites are here, just outside the edge of the settlement, but within the conservation area. Adjacent listed buildings include 17 to 25 and 27 to 29 Claywell, and 54, 54A, 56 and 58 Brook Lane. Surrounding uses are residential. Both sites are designated as provisional open land in the Unitary Development Plan. In the draft local plan, the west site is allocated for housing, while the east site is proposed to be safeguarded land. The west site previously had outline planning permission granted for 8 units in 2014. However, this has now expired. These 2 images are extracts from the tree survey submitted by the 2 applicants. Tree preservation orders a tree preservation order protects trees to the south of the east site. So these trees here, south of this wavy blue line, are the subject of a tree preservation order, which is an area order covering woodland rather than specified trees. And the conservation area designation, of course, provides protection to trees within the sites. This is a view from Cartop Lane across the site that's currently under development. The green grassed area at the front of this, in the foreground of this picture, is currently being dug up by developers. So the east site is beyond the green and brown areas of grass, and then obviously the west site is further beyond to the west. This, apologies, it's a Google Street View image, but it is relatively up to date. This is the view of the west site from the east end of Fulwood Drive, where there's currently a turning area. Members visited the sites and saw this part of Fulwood Drive this morning. A public footpath runs between the two sites. This is its north end, where it meets Claywell. This is the public footpath looking northwards uphill towards Claywell. This is a view looking north-eastwards from the public footpath looking across the east site. Outline planning permission is sought for residential development at both sites, with all matters reserved other than access. At the west site, the applicant indicatively proposes 10 units, while a different applicant indicatively proposes 14 units at the east site. Both applicants have submitted the indicative layouts and unit numbers for information only, and do not want these to be referred to in the development descriptions. However, members can have regard to this information in their consideration of both applications. I should point out that here we have that this is a plan submitted with the east application, hence the red line around the east site, but it does also show indicatively a layout for the west site. For the west site application, a slightly different layout has been shown, obviously because the west site alone doesn't require a full vehicular access to the edge of the site where it would meet the east site. In terms of land use and the principle of development, Unitary Development Plan Policy D5 states that development on provisional open land will not be granted for this development, and paragraph 10.14 of the West Report sets out the relevant text of that policy in full. The proposals for both these sites are contrary to that adopted policy and also to policy R9, given the previous, albeit discontinued, partial use of the sites as allotment land. In the case of the west site, however, it is noted that planning permission has previously been granted for residential development. Although that permission has expired, it remains a material consideration. An allocation of the site for housing is proposed in the draft local plan. The Council's inability to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply is also material. Together, these considerations carry significant weight to the extent that, in the view of officers, approval of planning permission is justified. In the case of the east site, where there is no previous approval of planning permission and no proposed local plan allocation for housing, the balance of considerations is different. The east site is proposed to be allocated as safeguarded land in the draft local plan, and the relevant draft policy PLP 6 states that this site will be protected from development and that the status of this site will only change through a review of the local plan. However, given that permissions have been granted at the sites either side of the east site, and approval is recommended again at the site to the west, given the limited weight that can be attached to draft policy PLP 6 and the allocation of safeguarded land, and again given the Council's inability to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, it is considered that there are material considerations that together justify approval of planning permission in this instance. Both sites are considered to be sustainable locations for residential development. Regarding design and conservation, as set out in the committee reports, it is considered that with appropriate amendment at reserved matter stage, both sites can be developed without causing unacceptable harm to the character and appearance of the Golka Conservation Area and to the setting and significance of adjacent listed buildings. Adequate green separation between the settlements of Golka and Wellhouse would be retained. And if I may just jump back to the hillside view of Golka, I should point out, as well as the Cartop Lane site not being quite accurately depicted in its extent here, but that the lowest or southernmost houses granted planning permission for that site are currently being constructed and would be located further south than any of the buildings proposed in the east or west sites now. In terms of residential amenity, at reserve matter stage, a detailed design can be drawn up to ensure that adequate distance is maintained between new and existing dwellings to ensure no unacceptable loss of amenity would occur, and to ensure that the proposed dwellings would also have an adequate level of amenity. In terms of highway safety, many of the objections received from local residents relate to highway safety matters, congestion, parking, and the adequacy of the local highway network. It is noted that whereas residents of 21 properties currently move their vehicles along Fulwood Drive, this would increase to 31 if only the west side development is approved, or 45 if both applications are approved. This level of traffic, however, is not unusual for a street of this size and design, and it is noted that no injury accidents have been reported in the last 5 years at the Fulwood Drive Victoria Lane Junction or the Share Hill Brook Lane Victoria Lane Junction. It is not recommended that planning permission be withheld on the grounds that informal parking will be prevented at the turning area of Fulwood Drive. Other matters, including in relation to Section 106 obligations, drainage, trees and ecological impacts, have been adequately addressed or would be addressed at reserve matters stage. As clarified in the committee update, 31 objections from occupants of 27 properties have been submitted in relation to the west site application, 35 from occupants of 32 properties in relation to the east site application. There is a significant overlap of objections and objectors to the two applications. 24 objectors from 22 properties objected to both applications. Thelma Walker MP has also objected to both applications. As set out in the committee reports, matters raised in those objections have been addressed or are not considered to be reasons for refusal. Approval of both applications, subject to conditions, is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Were you going to speak individually against the two? On both that, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'm Hamish Gledhill. I'm speaking on behalf of both applicants being considered here. I won't go into too much detail because there's no one speaking against it, but I want to commend the officer report on covering the issues in great detail. Just want to clarify the point about the difference in the sites. The east site being in the draft local plan is, as was mentioned, allocated safeguarded land. However, in the officer's report it is pointed out that there are challenges against this, which obviously affects the amount of weight given to that plan. And in fact, a letter from the planning inspector to the council dated the 25th of October just raises concerns about the council's view to safeguarded land in urban areas like this, which again just undermines perhaps the amount of weight that can be given to that draft allocation. So other than that, we appreciate that it is a sensitive site in a conservation area, but there is detailed guidance given in the officer report which helps us take this forward at a reserve matter stage if we take it forward. And we believe that considering the site is overgrown, it's possibly unsightly, it's certainly unusable, we believe with the guidance given that there's an opportunity here to create a high quality development at a prominent hillside location. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Yes.
I can appreciate the reasons why officers are recommending approval, but I have some really serious concerns about the impact on the buffer zone between Gurkha and Wellhouse. I think point 10.27, when it says that this development could reduce the buffer that separates Gurkha and Wellhouse, I think it's pretty clear that it will affect that buffer zone and it will affect the setting of the conservation area of Gurkha. So that is my big concern, that I think it's going to have a real impact. It will change the character of Gurkha as you're looking at it from the Wellhouse side, which does concern me. I also do have some concerns about the traffic, perhaps not really along Fulmer Drive, but as it's dropping down onto Share Hill, we noted this morning as we were walking up there, it's an extremely steep road there, and I think with more traffic using it, it could cause problems, particularly at the junction at the bottom. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Any further submissions? Councillor Sick.
Obviously, this is east meets west, isn't it? Can you just explain to me the two sites? One of them shows a road going through the other side. Have both parties agreed that that would happen, or is it two actually separate applications, really? And one will have to fight with the other for the ransom strip?
Through you, Chair, I understand the two applicants are in communication with each other. As far as the planning applications are concerned, the only requirement that the Council imposes in terms of validation of the applications is that the applicants serve the correct notices on the relevant landowners. Whether or not the two applicants have reached agreement on providing access across the west site, we don't know, and it's not a planning consideration.
I wonder if I might say on... I didn't know you were coming, Bernard, but I'll give you a chance. This reminds me in a smaller way of the Netherthong. We were at Netherthong at the end, but that ground was really lovely. This, I can't say the same for this. It has been said that it's pretty rough land, and it is rough from what I saw. But we're stuck with it, and they throw it at us every time. We haven't got a plan. So we've got to put that into the mix, I'm afraid. Councillor McGuinn, did you Councillor Homewood?
I was just going to say, I know we're only looking at the outline and the access point, so I appreciate, obviously, it's accessible from that site fairly. In terms of the actual access point on whatever it's called, Forward Avenue. But just listening to what Councillor Walker was saying, I mean, it does seem to me that hill, we couldn't even go up in a bus. So that tells you how poor the accessibility is. There doesn't, when this report comes out, we're going to see a proper assessment of what actually it means for the highways network. And, if you're on that road, all the houses only had parking space for one car. They had garages, but looked to me like you couldn't fit a car in the garages that were there. So, surely we have to take consideration of the fact of what's already there and how people are actually going to be able to park and live there already, and the impact that causes. So, I suppose from a technical point of view, it depends on what comes forward in terms of how many houses it is, and so on and so forth. But there did seem to me to be quite a lot of issues there that weren't, that we don't have a lot of detail on yet.
Prepared to move. I'm prepared to move the officer's recommendation, knowing what the comeback will be for if this is done. For this first one. The first one. Have I got a second? No. Come on then. Give me the alternative. Pardon? You'll second. Thank you. Of the officer's recommendation, please show.
No, sorry, this is just this one site at a time.
Got to do them separately.
The west site.
Yeah. Against? Against? No?
That one's approved.
But now I'll put the second one, unless somebody else wishes to speak before I put it. Do you wish to make a contribution? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think, having heard what colleagues have said, I think our major concern about is actually the impact of additional development on the highways network.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just ask you, you're talking about the east site now, aren't you?
I am only the, yes.
East site,
yes.
yeah.
And it fits in with what, similar to what we said about the application in Paddock, about the cumulative impact. Any additional development, particularly on that, the east site, will contribute to traffic going out onto Victoria Lane, onto Brook Lane, and which is realistically the only way to do it. And there's great concerns about that. I think the other point I would make about development on that site is about the fact we've not got the current development plan, because when the UDP was put into place, Heritage Mills was not being developed, had not been developed, it's not been considered to be developed. There's actually 40 units on there in addition to the UDP, and what this represents is actually extra development in that area, all of which has an impact on the highways network and the infrastructure in Gorka Village. Thank you.
I take all that on board, but unfortunately when we get the highways report, it says within their whatever figures, and should it go to appeal, so we refuse it, it goes to appeal, we lose it, and lose a lot more besides. So we are where we are, I'm afraid, and it's not very good. So, you wish to...
Yeah, I just wondered, Chair, if we need a contribution to any highways situation on those two sides.
To you, Chair. The application that we've considered here is an outline application with just the means of access assessed at this stage. We haven't assessed a development proposal, so we don't know what the impacts are yet. It's for the reserved matters to address, what the impacts are and how they would be mitigated.
Well, once again, if nobody's prepared to move this, I'll move it again. Seconded, Councillor Sims. All those in favour, please show.
It's approved.
Page 205, 17 Broad Lane, Upperthorne.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Amy Proctor and I'm the case officer for this application. The application site was seen by members earlier today and relates to a detached single-storey dwelling on Broad Lane in Upperthorne. The following are a few photographs of the site. This image is taken from Broad Lane to the north of the site looking south. This is from the corner of the site looking north. This is looking at number 15, Broad Lane. This is the south elevation where the proposed extensions will be. And this is looking at number 15, Broad Lane. And this shows number 19, Broad Lane. And number 21 as well over here. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 2 side extensions, 2 dormer windows, the raising of the roof of the east wing and alterations. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Patrick as set out in the published committee report. In terms of key matters for consideration, given that the expansion of the roof will reach a height no greater than the main part of the existing dwelling and will still remain lower than its immediate neighbours, no undue overshadowing or overbearing would occur. The two extensions proposed are not considered to be large in scale and are to the south elevation of the dwelling, setting a good-sized garden amenity space. The proposal is therefore considered to have an acceptable impact on visual and residential amenity. The application is therefore recommended for approval. And there's the plans for the proposal as well. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Richard, we have some speakers. And David, who objects to the application.
Chair and councillors, I live with my husband at number 19 Broad Lane, immediately above the proposed cross-shaped building. Now, we chose our bungalow for our retirement because it was south-facing, it had large windows and lots of sunlight. My husband has an eye condition and he does suffer from that winter depression called SAD. When he suffers, I suffer as well. We do enjoy from our sunroom, which is that, if you look at number 19, just above number 17, there's a little tooth nick out there. That's where our sunroom is. We've just upgraded that. And we enjoy a lot of heat retention and solar gain from there, which helps us with our heating bills. And being on fixed incomes, this is important to us. We both read a great deal and we like good light. We object to that part of the development which raises the roof, as this would significantly impact on our light and on our sunroom in particular. Also, we would be overlooking the new Velux windows, and there might well be privacy issues. As well, there is compromise of our visual amenity. Number 15 itself, for Stuart and Jane, has a conservatory very close to the boundaries of number 17. And they were appalled to find, when a tree was cut down, how near that gable end, which exists now, is. To raise the roof and extend a little bit to the front would cause even more overshadowing. And I have to disagree with the councillors, with the council site meeting, in that there is considerable overshadowing, and they also have loss of light. To summarise, the applicant's desire to have 4 bathrooms, 5 toilets, 2 staircases and 2 living rooms would be at our expense, that of the residents of number 19 and number 15 who live in more modest houses. We object on the grounds of loss of light, significant overshadowing and immediate visual intrusion. Thank you.
Angela, yeah? So it's Angela Hudson, who's the applicant.
Members of the committee, my name is Angela Hudson, owner at 17 Broad Lane. My husband and I both work his business in commercial interiors, and he's contracted to work all over the UK. I'm the secretary for the company. Home Firth is where we've wanted to live for a long time, and when we managed to sell our previous home of 20 years, we were delighted to be able to move there and to a house with such a wonderful view. We're a family of 4 adults. Our 2 sons are 25 and 22, both of whom are forced to live with us still, as they cannot afford houses of their own for the foreseeable future. We're looking to make alterations to our home due to the size of the bedrooms currently in the property. We have 4 bedrooms, 2 of them only just big enough to fit a bed with no other furniture, which, as you know, is not practical for modern living, especially for young adults with all their belongings. They need their own space. We're seeking to raise the roof on the eastern side to accommodate 2 practical-sized bedrooms, leaving 1 downstairs and a further bedroom where the study is at the moment. We are not increasing the number of bedrooms overall, still 4. Before submitting the application, we carefully considered all of our options and employed the services of a professional architect. The impact any alterations would have on neighbouring properties was carefully considered, as was the design and build of the extensions. The materials we've chosen to use are of a very high quality, as will be the build quality, which will fit in with the neighbouring properties more so than the house does at present. The house was built in the early 1980s and has not been altered since. Most of the houses on Broad Lane have been altered and upgraded in recent years. Crowwood, number 17, has not. Currently, the house is very inefficient and of a poor standard environmentally. We're seeking to upgrade the double glazing, the roof insulation, the heating, and to install solar integrated hot water roof tiles into the new roof to bring it in line with 21st century requirements, making it much warmer and therefore much more environmentally friendly. Any work we carry out will involve the employment of local tradesmen and women. Materials will also be sourced locally. Whilst our property may appear to have a large footprint, it is almost all single storey, so does not provide a large overall area. We are not seeking to increase the square footage by a lot. We're merely looking to increase the bedroom space internally. There are a lot of much bigger houses in the area, including number 3D, which is immediately next door. Our alterations will not bring any more traffic to the area, and we already have more than adequate parking on our own drive for all of our own vehicles. The large tower, currently on the roof at the centre of the house, will be removed. This is directly in front of our neighbour's property at number 19 Broad Lane. This will improve their view and light, as I'm sure you will agree. Thank you all.
Members. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. This is a sensitive site. I remember when it came in, when it was built new. And if you look at that, it's twice as big as any other property already up there on that site. So I'm not happy with it, that it's going to be extended anymore. In fact, I think it's over-intensification of that site now for it to go any further. So I'm not happy with it, and I move that we refuse this application.
No, seconded. Councillor Homewood.
I mean, we all went on the site visit this morning. I'm struggling a little bit with the idea that the changes are overbearing or overshadowing on the other properties. The other properties are at a higher elevation. If anything, the properties that are there now overlook that property. So I'm a bit lost as to why that's the feeling. And you know, I don't see the problem there, and I think the officer's recommendation is right. So I would move the officer recommendation.
Need to take the Councillor Walker.
Yeah. I agree with Councillor Homewood after visiting the site. I think the officer's responses to the concerns about the development are valid.
I must admit, it is a lot lower down. The fact that the tower's going, which will remove a large part of it, and so that really more than compensates for the little bit that it's going to come back up again. So I'm inclined to agree with you on that one as well. I'll put now the refusal. Grounds over development. Yeah. All those in favour of refusal, please show. 2 against. 8.
It's fallen.
I need now to get a proposal and second for the officer's recommendation. I got that from Councillor Homewood and Walker. Right. All those in favour, please show.
8. 4.
Against?
2.
Application's approved.
Page 215, and it's the land adjacent to the Spotted Cow Public House, New Hay Road.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Bill Toppin. I'm case officer for this site. You may remember this site. An application came before you. Excuse me. I've got a bit of a cold if my voice goes. I apologise. Came before you last year and was before you as a slightly amended scheme with a few more houses. So I'll go into that a bit later on. Site comprises an area 1.2 hectares on the northern side of New A Road, Salondike Nook. Includes the former Spotted Cow pub and its curtilage and some green fields to the rear. The site, this is obviously a brownfield site and the greenfields are a greenfield site. There are a large number of trees on the site which are covered by a tree preservation order, and there is a public right-of-way which goes up to the east. The site is unallocated on the UDP, and the land to the rear is provisional open land. As I said before, there is an approval from this committee already for residential 26 dwellings on this site, and what is proposed before you today is a full application for a total of 32, i.e. 6 more. The principal differences between the schemes are to the rear. Previously there were a substantial number of large detached houses. What the applicants have gone for is a smaller semi-detached. As a result you get this arrangement here. The second principal change is to the rear end of the site, where there is a retaining wall. Oh, thank you very much. Where there's a retaining wall. Previously the scheme that you agreed had a retaining wall going right the way down to the bottom of this site here. The current proposal for the houses on the rear has a garden level at the first floor level, but it's still substantially below the gardens on Deercroft. Issues before you. Obviously, the principle of residential has already been accepted, as has the access point. Given the increase in numbers, we revisited our policies on affordable housing, provision of open space and education contributions. On the affordable housing, with the Spotted Cow pub still being there, the scheme does qualify for consideration of vacant building credit, but taking that into account, the number of affordable units we would require would be 5, which is 1 more than last time. Likewise, the POS contributions, which would go off-site to a development on the other side of the road here, which is easily accessible from the zebra crossing there, has increased up to 85,100, and the education contribution has increased up to £79,074. These will be secured in a 106. Amended layout is considered to be acceptable. It satisfies our space about building standards. The relationships to neighbouring properties are satisfactory. Again, I stress that obviously the Deercroft properties here are at a considerably higher level than these properties, so these garden areas and the roofs will be very much lower than these properties, so there won't be any interference with the residential amenity. In terms of highways, the access is already agreed, and the internal layout is very only marginally changed. There's adequate parking within the scheme for visitors as well as the houses themselves, turning facilities for service vehicles, and there's a sustainable transport contribution of £10,000 towards improvement of provision of a bus shelter, and 15,840 towards Metro cards. These will be considered in the 106 as well. Our recommendation is to delegate to officers to secure a 106 agreement providing the affordable housing, off-site POS, education and the contributions towards sustainable transport, and impose relevant conditions. See from your update, we've had the applicants have requested at the start that starter homes be considered as part of the affordable housing contribution. We'd ask you to delegate that negotiation on the appropriate mix of the affordable housing types to us as part of the 106 negotiations. Thank you.
Members. Is that seconded? Second. All in favour, please show.
Hang on.
Pardon? I thought Ken moved it.
No, I didn't say a thing.
Oh, right. Go on then. I did. Who did move it then?
You're all there. I'm not moving it. Is it? I just want. Yeah. I know you don't want to hear me, but I did put my button down before all you lot chirped in. Right? I just think that it's like squeezing an orange till pipsqueak, this lot. I just it's unbelievable. I mean, we went out last time and had a look at it, and that were a considerable amount of houses then. And looking at Lindley as a whole and what's gone off there, and the air pollution and everything, I just think, yeah, it's too much. But you guys are obviously going to pass it, but, you know, you'll reap the benefits later on. I just think they're making us a laughing stock, because they'll come back again and they'll want another 10 or something like that. It's just crazy. I'll be voting against it.
Councillor Martin.
I'm glad I heard Ken before. I've got a lot of sympathy with what Ken says about cramming a lot of cramming stuff onto small sites. But actually, having heard what some of the complaints from local residents are about continually building big houses, which people can't have, and actually I know it's a lot of development on this site. I just want to appreciate the work that's been done to actually get smaller properties on there, which are more likely, they're going to meet a wider variety of need than the bigger houses that sometimes we get. So I certainly appreciate the work that's been done in that respect.
Somebody prepared to move. Councillor Uller, seconded Councillor Sokol. Do you want to speak now, Councillor Sokol? Well, you've seconded it, yes, so I've taken that for granted. I think you're pushing at an open door, Councillor Sokol.
I'm talking myself, I think.
Have you moved it, Councillor Sokol? Did you? You seconded it, right? Councillor Huller, that's right, I said that. All those in favour, please show. Against?
It's approved.
So finally, 233, page, Middleburn Farm, Burn Road, Birchincliff.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. My name's Adam Walker. I'm the case officer on this application. It's an outline application for 3 dwellings. Access, appearance, layout and scale are being considered. Only landscaping is reserved for future approval. This aerial photo identifies the site. It relates to the front garden of Middleburn Farm, which is this property here. It's Grade 2 listed. There's also some 3 listed buildings over here, three dwellings. Access is off a public byway, which forms part of Burn Road. There's outline planning permission for 4 dwellings on this site just here, and there's permission for 30 dwellings on this land to the south as part of a larger development of 95 houses, which Harron Homes are developing. This plan shows the site. It's allocated as provisional open land on the UDP. It's part of a larger POL allocation, and the purple dashed lines just indicate the Harron Home site, which I referred to, for 95 houses. And on the emerging local plan, the site forms part of a larger housing allocation. So this is just a photo showing the site, relatively flat lawn garden, stone boundary wall to two sides. Shows the front of the site. This is the access road into the site. As I say, serves 4 properties currently. And this is an access track down the side of Middleburn Farm. This would serve one of the plots, and that's just looking at Middleburn Farm. So this is the proposed site plan. So it's a row of 3 houses fronting onto Burn Road. The scheme's been amended from 4 houses down to 3. This partly to reduce the prominence of parking along the frontage. You can just see on this plan as well the overlay of the Harron Homes development. This is what the properties would look like. This is the frontage at the top. Officers negotiated changes to the scale and appearance to get some variation in the height and depth of the buildings and reduce the prominence on the approaches to the site. Proposed materials are natural stone and artificial slate. So the main issues are the principle of development and the setting on the adjacent listed buildings. Officers consider the principle of development to be acceptable. This is considering the application in the context of the Harron Home scheme to the south. It's considered that the proposal would not significantly affect the landscape character of the area. The scheme would have some impact on the setting of Middleburn Farm, but officers feel having the buildings to one side, leaving a degree of openness in terms of the vistas of the building. In this location, the buildings would have the least impact, and the overall design is considered to be sympathetic. So whilst there would be some harm to the setting of the listed building, it's considered to be less than substantial and outweighed by the delivery of new housing. The access is considered to be acceptable. There are some coal mining issues still to resolve as detailed in the report, and the recommendation is for approval, subject to the delegation of authority to officers to resolve those coal issues and impose all necessary and appropriate conditions. Thank you, Chair.
I think members will be pleased to hear I'm not going to take up too much of your time as we're the last item on. So thank you for your time. Members, the application before you this afternoon is the culmination of a significant amount of engagement and consultation with your officers. Whilst the application is in outline, a significant amount of detail has been provided by the applicants in order to demonstrate the appropriateness of the development when it's considered against national and local planning policy. The proposed development should be seen, as your officer notes, in the context of the existing planning permissions in the local area. As members are aware, there is a drive to provide much-needed new homes in order to assist the council in the delivery of an appropriate supply of housing land in the district. The wider planning history of the local area is therefore hugely important, and this application needs to be viewed in that context. Indeed, previous decisions have noted that should permissions come forward, which they have done to the south, then the character and appearance of the local area would be altered. That said, the applicant has worked with the council in order to lessen and manage the development and its perceived impact. The proposal has been reduced from 4 homes to 3 and the design and form altered and parking provided within sensitively designed garages, which ensures that the development harmonises with the landscape and the adjacent listed building. On this basis, the council's conservation officer have considered the amended plans and have confirmed that they are comfortable with the proposals in relation to their impact and relationship with the adjacent heritage asset. Members, the application has been considered in detail by your planning, conservation, highway and biodiversity officers. They, as we, conclude that the development is appropriate, would not impact on the wider natural and built landscape and would deliver much needed new housing and would be sustainable development. Thank you for your time.
Members.
No, I just want to say something. Is that okay?
Come along.
Right, I was on the Strategic Planning Committee when the 95 houses were proposed over here, so I'm sad to see some more houses going in the area. It's a very narrow road. We on the Strategic planning committee, when we looked at this, we were minded to oppose it. I know it's nothing to do with it, but we couldn't do it because of the rule about 5-year housing. Okay, that was the only reason why it was passed, and we were frightened that the authority would be taken to court and we would lose it and we'd have costs against us. And so we came. Now there's more housing going in the area. I can't support it, but I understand why people would support it. Okay, so I won't be voting for this.
Councillor Song.
Yeah, Chair, I agree with we have approved 95 houses before, but this is on application only 3 houses there. But I don't think how we can justify to refuse the 3 houses when we have already approved 95. Thank you. So I move the officer recommended to move.
Is that seconded? I'll second it then. All those in favour, please show. Against? And that concludes the meeting. Thank you.